I'll bring it on with the topic. Sincerely, you are the first public audience who sees this, and I'm really happy that cloud community is the first audience to hear about this feature and actually to have some kind of first knowledge. So the topic that I would like to describe today is called Magento Remote Storage with AWS S3. And the idea was floating for pretty long time. The idea is pretty simple. We wanted to have Magento to work natively with Amazon AWS S3. Why? Because S3 is very interesting and very good storage. So it is object storage with very cheap costs and very good redundancy. And if you compare it with EFS and EBS, like they have pretty different ideas, but you can implement both EFS and EBS without actually making no changes to Magento. With S3 you cannot do this because S3 is API-based storage, and you should make a dramatic set of changes to make Magento work with it. And somewhere in my demo, I will show a few very interesting cases in Magento that me and my team had to deal with and make it work. And the biggest problem with Magento core itself is that Magento initially never expected to work with remote storages. If you have some kind of experience with Magento core, you will see that there are a lot of native file system calls. There are a lot of something that like cannot work with remote storage itself. So the very I would say high level example, if you, for example, you have a cluster, you have let's assume 3 nodes, and you want to share the media file between the 3 nodes. So you have a bunch of options, and one of the option you use the EBS, another option you use EFS. Third option that used currently on cloud, we use cluster request to sync data between different nodes, and it works, but it's not. It's not very convenient because we don't want to have separate mechanisms to store files, and having something more unified makes more sense for us. So I decided to focus and create some mechanism for Magento to work natively with S3 bucket. So this is very interesting topic itself, the permissions. S3 supports public and private access, and is a good example of public access is you have public link to image, you open this image in browser and you see the content. The public is public access that you have to have mechanism to control it. You should always focus on making it, you should always care about making it private as possible. And currently Magento is part of Adobe, and Adobe has very strict security rules. And Adobe's general rule and guide is you should never have public access on your bucket. This is right security, and you should follow it. So during implementation of this functionality, we focused on the security and we make it possible to work with private only buckets. So itself, S3 supports few, and like not only S3 but AWS supports few authentication methods. The easiest way is providing access key and secret keys. We added this possibility, but because you don't always have possibility to set up IAM role, and maybe you want to test something faster than setting up IAM role, and we added possibility to use access key and secret key. But sincerely, the right and the good way is using IAM roles, So we currently providing two ways to authenticate between Magento and S3 is by providing access keys or using IAM roles. The shared folders. And this was a very interesting topic itself because Magento tries to write a lot of files, but it doesn't really mean that they all should be shared. And the good example is logs. Let's take logs somewhere outside and think, okay, we have a lot of logs. Magento writes a lot of logs. And the problem that we currently face on our Magento Cloud is that Magento writes so many logs that it's not possible to synchronize them with using the Gluster.fs. And if you have more experience in cloud, in Magento Cloud, you will see that logs not shared between nodes on production clusters. And that's because the problem that Magento writes so many logs. And the right solution is eventually to move logs outside into some kind of log aggregation system, New Relic, Logic, whatever, but they should never go to the shared storage. And if we remove this element, the only three directories which we want to share is pubmedia, var import, and var export for import-export module. Everything else you can actually have, you should not share, and it doesn't really make much sense to share. Another good example is AWS S3 folder, but there are, well, AWS S3 directory has some security consideration, and in ideal world, we do not want to have write permission to this folder. So we are currently looking for ways how to make read-only, the configure Magento only with correct environment variables. So we don't really want to share this folder as well. So this is the three folders which we will work on a S3 bucket. Of course, it's all configurable. We provide very robust configuration via DXML. So if you feel like you want to share more, you could do it, but it should be enough for most cases. We provide three different configurations, and this is very important topic because they really influence the experience with this functionality. So the default way to use the S3 bucket data, and this is backward compatible way. You literally don't have to do anything. You just enable the S3 bucket, and Magento works from the box. This way called the get PHP default way, and the idea is simple. Magento uses nginx configuration which goes, and Apache configuration which goes through the get.php file fallback. And idea of this file, if it doesn't find anything locally, is try to look the file in some different storage. It was previously implemented for media storage, but we added implementation for our remote storage. And currently get.php knows how to work with the S3 buckets. The problem with this method is why we don't really want to have this method by default, because it goes through the Magento application. And bootstrapping Magento is pretty heavy thing, and in cases when we work with static files, we want to avoid it as possible. So this is very basic way. This will work from the box without any additional configuration. The second way, which actually will be somehow recommended, it will be better, much better. It's called nginx proxy path. So nginx itself provides possibility to proxy requests through the separate I would say, service. And we will provide configuration how to make nginx work through the S3 bucket. So I will have a diagram later, but let's just assume that customer requires some nginx processes the URL, nginx sees that he has configuration to S3 bucket. Nginx goes and finds this image, and nginx also stores this in its own native cache storage. So Magento will not be affected in any way because everything will be solved by nginx. The very good thing with the nginx way that we added possibility to resize images on the fly. So previously, the only way to resize images, and Magento needs a lot of images, was using the after save on catalog, or you have separate command to perform resizing, and it was creating a lot of new images for different sizes. With nginx proxy path, you have possibility to install separate nginx extension, which provides resizing on the fly. And it's very fast and it's caches, and we really like this way. So we will provide the configuration and we will provide this as our default recommended way. The third option is something that we want to have on our cloud, and we want you also to have it if you have possibility, the Fastly. Fastly is very powerful CDN, which has possibility to be configured with S3 storage as well. And the idea behind that is eventually you Fastly will cache requests. Fastly has credentials to the S3. Fastly sees the S3 URLs, and then it will go and grab the content, and all of the next calls will be cached on Fastly side. And because Fastly is, like we say, cheaper than S3, it should be very, very cost efficient use. And Fastly also provides the image resizing mechanism. It's very, very powerful, and it's even more powerful than nginx. And we also will provide way to resize, like Fastly already natively provides this way, but we will also add documentation how to use Fastly and perform image resizing on Fastly and not on the backend. We do not want to have resizing backend. So this will be I would say, the most optimal way, but you should have Fastly. So if you don't have Fastly and nginx proxy path, it should be the best solution for you. Next one is some high-level workflow about the resizing, because resizing is a really great feature. And here you can see that the flow is pretty simple. If we use resizing with nginx, nginx will take care of all of the heavy job. It will use the nginx cache. It will perform resizing. It will store the cache and provide a response to the requester. So it's very simple, but it's a very powerful mechanism, and we actually added pretty bunch of code to make it supported. Because how does the nginx and Fastly know that you need to resize the image? Is that you have parameters in your URL. So you provide width, you provide height, or maybe you want to provide some additional parameters, and then nginx and Fastly understands it and resize those files. I will provide a small demo. If you have any questions in any point of time, you can stop me and we can discuss it. Let's move to the demo. So for demo, I will use Magento Cloud environment. It's my environment in US4. Let me open it. And also I will open a bucket which has some files, and I will show you on the fly how does it work. So let's assume we have some front page. We have an image. I previously uploaded this image to S3 bucket, but we actually will do a new page. Let's go to admin. Let's go to some maybe content pages and edit the page. We have home page. I want you to actually to see it, so I will clean some content before doing this. Let me find correct directories. Customer map. So Magento stores these files in vcvik directory. We will use it for our content vcvik. So let's remove this file. Let's add some new file. So just a reminder, this is already configured to work as S3 bucket, and Magento uses it for all of the operations. So let's upload some image, documents, images. I will find something that I never didn't upload before. This one, not there. Let's find something else. Let's have cat. Let's take this cat. Let's add this file. Let's put some dimensions here, and maybe I can do it bigger. Let's make it bigger. 300. And let's save the page. So probably that's all. Let's go back to the customer view. And here we see the cat. And the important thing that I wanted to point here is if we want to open this image, we see that Magento URL, it is Magento URL, it is not S3 bucket. And what happens here is that it is using standard resolver strategy. It uses a get PHP file, and then it proxies to the AWS S3. So as I said, from the customer perspective and the SI perspective, nothing changed. It should work out of the box, and we expect it to be, I would say, default, but not default recommended by default strategy. We added the support for S3 for all of the models. We added this to the B2B. We currently adding to the MSI and Adobe Stock integration. So all of the models should have the support. We also added specific configuration which allow you to specify the image resizing strategy. If I open this. So yeah, we added, hopefully you can see it. So we added a new option called catalog media URL format, and previously it called unique hash per image variant. This is a legacy, and the idea is you have to generate them manually. And the image optimization based on query parameters is the one that we will really recommend to use with nginx configuration and fastly, because you don't have to perform any image resizing on backend. Everything will be taken over by fastly and nginx. So this is the option that we added. Configuration for S3 bucket is stored in .env.php file. It is being set with CLI options, so everything should be working fine for your installs and updates. We also found a few places which needs more attention that we saw before, and a good example is sitemap. So previously sitemap was had the possibility to be stored in any directory in your file system, which some way was existing in Magento, but we don't really want to have this support, because having a possibility to write files into any file system, any folder is not very good from security point, and it doesn't work on cloud. So we get the possibility to store sitemaps in media sitemap, and right now it will be working with the same mechanism to proxy your calls to the AWS S3. So everything should work as expected. As I said, we made the changes for all of the Magento models, catalog, CMS, import-export, reports, and so on and so on. So we expect to work out of the box for you. We expect to deliver the functionality in next patch release, 2.4.2. So if everything goes right and we don't have any other surprises, we will try to deliver it in next patch release. So you can participate in community contribution. We will be really appreciating your help because we think it's very important functionality and we really want to make it shine. That's all for my demo. We have some time for questions. Do you have any questions?
Are we going to be able to use this feature properly for product images? We've got a lot of clients now storing images on S3. To be able to access them directly from S3 would be a lot better.
Yeah, this is a great question. Yeah, we added possibility to store all the images in S3. So you have this possibility. It works all fine. So you have possibility to use it for SWAT, for custom options, for configurable product, for downloadable. Everything is currently working, and you should be able to use it as required. So.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the image sizes for this. We have merchants that use high resolution catalog. So how the resize will happen in this case, and is there any limitation to this?
I think the best way for me to demonstrate is actually using Fastly image resizing size.
So everything will be offloaded to the Fastly image resize mechanism.
So how Fastly work is actually you Fastly stores only original, like Magento on S3 bucket will store only original image. And what happens next? Once Fastly or nginx not only Fastly, if they found a specific specific arguments in your URL, they will perform resizing. They don't really care what is the original, but they will perform resizing on the fly because Magento will provide the arguments in the image URL. So that's how they work right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and it's very efficient from the cost perspective because you do not have to keep like 20 or 30 image sizes in your file system, in your bucket. You keep only original image, and everything else is being handled by the server that processes requests. And it's much more faster than having resizing and then trying to load this file from the system and so on. Yeah.
Does it require any theme redesign or so in case of the Magento Commerce Cloud application, we have the default Fastly image optimization and deep Fastly image optimization. But in both cases, images were stored in the Magento Commerce Cloud service rather than S3 buckets. So how we should communicate this to the customers and etc.
As I said, from customer perspective, nothing will change because what happens, we will just change the URLs to images. So this is example just describes this. So if customer enables the resizing on servers on I would say, how do we call it, with parameters, Nothing will change in the themes, but Magento will generate URLs which contains the arguments to the height and width, and then it will be processed by HTTP.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
there are more questions in the chat.
You have questions?
In the chat.
Okay, video record, we will have it shared.
Yeah, it's the last two messages.
Okay, input-output performance. This is a really great question that I was really waiting for. Thank you, Benjamin. So the performance is not bad, I would say. It really depends on the correct configuration. So in my example with Magento Cloud, I'm using the US4. It doesn't, as you can see, I'm using US4 region for Magento Cloud, which technically located in US West 2 region in AWS. And AWS, I would say they not require, but they really recommend to have the EC2 and S3 in the same regions to achieve the best performance. And the best performance that you can achieve is 25 gigabits per second, if I'm not wrong. It's fast, but it will never be as fast as local file system because you still have requests. But for customer, it should not take any difference because for customer side we will still cache the images in. You should cache the images in nginx or fastly, and once they cached, they don't see any difference. The only difference where you can see is technically if you have very heavy operations like import export on backend. And for this problem, we will in future will provide possibility to have this in some variable way. But for front end, it should not have any difference in our measurements. And that's what we actually wanted to like. You should not notice it. But of course, it will be if you just have static comparison between S3 and local file system, it will be always slower because you have additional costs for API requests. But for user experience, it should not be any difference.
I also have a question. Is this feature going to be working with the cloud only or as well to the community or ours?
Yeah, this is also a great question. So we decided to make this feature as part of Magento community, Magento open source. So we deliver this as part of Magento open source and you will be able to use without Magento Commerce. It is
cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and to add to that, just to clarify, so on cloud, it's supported, it's gonna work, but we don't yet have the final plan of like kind of making it a default option or provisioning S3 buckets out of the box. So just to set expectations that this feature is releasing and you can actually enable it and connect it to your cloud instance as Oleh shows in his demo. But it doesn't yet mean that it's going to be a default option at this point.
But it could be advertised to the merchant saying, hey, we have default solution for this.
Yeah, well, why we actually started to work on this because we saw there was different S3 implementations and it looks like it was pretty heavily requested feature. And we decided actually, it actually could fit in our needs as well. So we decided to make it possible to work it out of the box without any additional, I would say, implementations and as part of Magento core, so everybody can contribute and everybody can have benefits from this functionality.
But the merchant would still need their own S3 account and pay for that. But they're not getting a certain amount of data on S3 that you provide as part of the cloud contract?
So for cloud contract, it's not finalized yet, and yeah, we'll share any details later because cloud is very separate question. But for on-prem, you will definitely need to set up S3 along with your EC2 if you're on-prem. But of course, the cost is very low. So if you're looking into the AWS S3 costs, S3 price, it's cheaper than EFS and EBS because they charge per request, and the 1,000 requests costs like what I don't can really even read this number. So it costs like half cent or something like that. And so it's really cheap if you have proper optimization and you do not have excessive calls. But even like if you have 1 million requests, it will be about like $5, like, or maybe $0.50. So it's pretty cheap solution. And for data transfer, they also doesn't really, yeah, and actually they don't charge anything if you have the same region. So yeah, and this is one of the biggest advantage because you pay per request. Comparing to EFS, you pay per the storage. And if assume you always have your files cached, you never call the request, send the request to the images. You should it should be almost free for you. But EFS will charge no matter if you read this data or not. It will charge for the storage itself. So it's kind of different concept here.
So there's no local caching happening on Magento itself. So if you take the Fastly example, Fastly, the links in the page would go back to Fastly. You have your parameters there for resizing. Fastly checks its cache, sees it doesn't have the image, goes back to Magento. Magento doesn't have the image, goes to AWS, to S3, gets the image, and then is it just a pass-through? It's then not storing that. So the original locally.
So both Fastly and nginx will work as front-end cache. For backend cache, for operations like on Magento, you like this is a very good example. Let me open it. So the problem with this, no, this is bad. Let me find something else. The problem with this particular case is that Magento checks the file size and file dimensions. And if we are thinking about remote storages, it is separate API call because Magento tries to guess it. And this is what we want to avoid. So this is backend caching, and we will add it. We actually added already, but it's kind of very simple right now. In future, we will add Redis caching. So such kind of calls where Magento only want to guess the parameters, metadata of image is actually S3 coded metadata. So metadata API call should be cached always. You should not have excessive calls to those kind of attributes. So this will be cached, and you should not experience backend excessive calls. For front-end, Fastly and nginx will take all of the heavy load and they will cache it on their side. And even more, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Magento will always go back to S3. If it gets a request for the image, it goes back to S3, gets the image, and then passes it through. There's never a local copy of the image stored again on Magento, because then you you would have to still calculate, because you got S3, let's say you got gigabytes of images, you then have to make provision for that as well on your cluster on cloud, if the images are copied.
And it's still different use cases. So if you're talking like Fastly and nginx, they should not go through Magento. They will be, if you properly configure nginx and Fastly, they will go directly to S3, avoiding Magento. So as nginx will go to S3, S3 will respond with image, and nginx will cache its image for whatever long time. The same goes with Fastly. If you properly configure Fastly, Fastly will avoid Magento because it knows the URL of image and go through the S3 and grab the image, and then it will cache on front end. So Magento never worked. Actually, it's involved in this server to S3 work, But in cases you don't use nginx configuration and Fastly configuration, and you use default get PHP, that's where we download image locally, because we do not have another way to cache file itself. We have to find something to replace nginx and Fastly. So the example with what I show here, it uses as the default get PHP image, get the PHP resolver. And if I go to my S3 bucket and I will delete it, let me delete this, and I will delete this image. Strange, they changed the interface this night. Looks like. Where is delete? Strange. So the idea, if here in the case you don't have image and you use the get PHP standard resolver, Magento will download this file previously and then will use it as local cache. But for, as I said, for nginx and Fastly, they will take care of it.
So as part of this release, your patch release, we'll also see a new release of the Fastly extension, because Fastly has to be aware that you're going to use S3.
So the Fastly configuration is simple. It is being done via VCL. So from our perspective,
yeah, I know, but I mean, in the admin, it's quite nice. I mean, most of the stuff for Fastly in the Magento admin, just kind of you turn it on, and you don't have to write your custom VCL. You can, but most of the time, it does it behind the scenes for you.
Yeah, so it's still under discussion because we have very tight limits to get on board with 2.4.2. We will definitely provide instruction with VCL. If it will be included, I don't have currently answer for this. We will try our best, but we want to make sure it is delivered before 2.4.2. But definitely we will provide some ways for you to know how to configure Fastly.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh yeah, I finally found the delete button. Let me show it. Delete. Which permanently delete. What I need to delete. Okay. So here is So here it goes through the get PHP, and first time it's hard to see here because it's fast, but eventually first time it didn't find the image, and then it sent the request to S3 and then put it into the local folder. So that's how the default mechanism will work. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, in the chat we don't have anything. Yeah, release date, we doing our best to get in touch with 2.4.2, and it's kind of soon, so we are doing our best really. Yeah, so looks like we're all clear. Yeah, thank you for your time. The recording will be available after the demo. We will share it on our Spark page. If you have any questions, please let's get in touch with Cloud Slack channel. And we will keep you in touch with all new news about when it will be released. Is there anything else you need to know? So yeah, that's all for today. Have a good day.
Thanks.
You too.
Thanks everyone.
Hey guys.
Thanks.